is the existence of a very basic accessibility option that's technically been around as long as cheat codes have been a thing.
A cheat code's the same as difficulty settings?
It's
The fact that
they're
they're called cheat codes kind of clue you into the attitude that should be.
Well, we went over it earlier. I
taken.
almost feel like it solves the entire problem if you label all of these things cheats. As,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? When you
Call it
turn
a
them
cheat.
on,
That's
you get the
totally
little
fine.
thing that says achievements have been disabled as long as you have cheats in it.
That's right. If you
We
play
live
with
in a world
creative
where-
mode on 7 Days to Die, every time you pause, it said, achievements are disabled while creative mode is enabled. It's very simple.
Offensive.
I also like it when cheat codes actually give something visual, like indicator. Wasn't there? I forget what it did
Chicken hat.
mechanically, but wasn't like a chicken hat or
Entertain, yeah.
remember Donut Drake in Uncharted?
Oh yeah, you're fat.
Well,
what they
that's ableist now.
Look what they took from us. Yeah, they
that's
literally
actually
banned it
why,
because it's
no
ableist,
joke.
yeah.
That's why they didn't put it in Uncharted
Oh
4.
my
They're like, yeah, no,
God.
it's offensive,
Yeah.
so we're not doing that.
Oh no.
I don't know if you remember, but Fat Nathan Drake is really funny. Watching him jump around and climb stuff.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious.
He is very dexterous.
I hope they never
Sometimes-
don't have the option to be fat as fucking Dark Souls. Otherwise, that's how we'll know the West has fallen.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
actually
but
around
sometimes
and character select is a big part of games, man. Can't change that.
sometimes that goes wrong too. I played Quantum Break on launch, and they had some. I bought it through Microsoft Store. Don't ever do that. And it bugged out and thought I pirated the copy, and so I played my entire game where I had like a pirate patch on my left eye. And it actually didn't look bad, but I felt kind of wronged.
Thing so offensive as to render the game unplayable.
Oh, it's
well,
Oh wait, hold on. Did they say
So that's
that, or did they say
unplayable.
that
It's
they
just
don't
that I will not play it.
anymore?
And I get a
There's a
quote.
difference there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's distorting
Not
the
worth
entire
my
topic,
time
man.
is-
Sucks. You have to stop this guy
Unplayable
from
is-
Well, like the only people who are gonna
Unplayable in
fucking
this
like
context
this
is just
are the ones
this-
that are totally bought in already. There's no convincing
completely
happening.
Well,
agree.
that's the
Yeah,
only
there's
people
no
left on the
conversation at
channel.
all.
I mean, it's something to bear in mind. There is really no desire to be persuasive here. It's,
No.
it's venting. It's
I'm
what
just going to
this
get on my
is.
soapbox and I'm going to have a scream into my microphone because I'm angry, but I also don't care.
Why are those?
It's like you just
The
look,
ones
at,
on
you
the
look at
soapbox.
the time code and you know it's like, oh shit, here we go. Because you know there's not going to be much more of it. It's just going to be this the entire thing. No.
I'm
Like,
why
sure
would I
there's
watch-
some
why would I
arguments.
watch
There's going to be an
the whole
argument or
thing,
two,
right?
yeah.
ugh.
when I asked why gamers couldn't just not use the no death setting, I received this answer. I think you'll find that at long last, this explains everything.
Wait, are we supposed to
right.
read this? I guess we are.
Okay. So if you can just let it play.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
I know I don't need to explain this. I know you already know this, but here goes. Indicators are a thing. If a game is released that has, for example, some DLC that lets your medieval knight have, let's say, a pointed white hood, or a 20th century German mustache enthusiast emblem, or Confederate flag capes, etc., etc., you wouldn't buy that game. You wouldn't just not download that DLC. You wouldn't go near that game. Why? Indicators. That one design choice is an indicator for the design philosophy of the game, and you wouldn't risk spending your hard-earned cash on something whose design philosophy is something you don't want to see in gaming.
Yeah.
You know, the only problem
Not
with this,
example, but I get the point.
yeah, there's a couple of problems, but like one of the ones is that would be like, this isn't going to
Voice
work on the Sterling. You've left it way too open to the whole like, oh, so people in wheelchairs the same as Nazis? You're like, no.
First off, yes, they made us put ramps everywhere, but
Yeah.
it's a shame that this point probably won't be actually engaged with, because I agree with the idea of there's an indicator for something that makes me think,
Sure,
oh,
yeah.
the design attitude of the people who
specific
make
problem
it
is just
is totally
better
thrown
one.
off. So
Here's a better real one that actually exists. You know, new Call of Duty games, right? The degradation of art style that it used to be, oh, who do you play as in multiplayer? Just like people as part of armies or different groups. But now it's like, oh, well, look, there's Homelander. Oh, look, there's
Yeah, and
Paul
Snoop Dogg,
Atreides or from Dune, or like, oh, look, there's like, I don't know, a duck or something. It's like, all right,
Oh, the
this
duck
is
is
kind
okay.
of like, this is running pretty contrary to kind of like what the
remember when the
overall
words
vibe was
Call
meant to
of
be.
Duty used to mean something?
And so that's the case where you'd
Duty.
be like, well, I mean, it
Remember.
doesn't really affect your experience. It's like, I mean, not really, but like, It's kind of
mean, it
weird
does,
to see
though.
people running around dressed as Homelander, you know.
For me, it
I would say
absolutely
that
does.
impacts my experience.
Yeah. Takes me
Well,
out of
it'd be that it
makes me
doesn't.
fucking cringe.
I guess that would be the thing. Is it's like, does it affect the experience much? It's like, well, that's kind of complicated because it is aesthetics, so it doesn't
that's
affect the
subjective, yeah.
gameplay necessarily. What I'm getting at is it could like for somebody they could be like, oh, who cares? But somebody could be like, nah, don't like that. Doesn't appeal to me. And you wouldn't say like, oh wow, what an idiot, huh? You don't want to play Call of Duty because there's guys running around dressed as like Homelander. You know, like you wouldn't make fun of someone for that. You just be like, yeah, okay.
It
And if you don't
affects
think
your
it's a big deal,
experience,
then you
but
don't think it's a big deal.
not game mechanics, but it's definitely going to affect your experience if you're fucking seeing Homelander.
Well, I'm just
Yeah,
saying. I'm just saying that a Call of Duty
um,
example is better than saying like, what if it's a medieval game where they're wearing white hoods? It's like, yeah, that's not going to be
Yeah.
very convincing to people.
I don't know why that's.
Are you
even the
implying
angle you
people in
would
the
take.
medieval ages
Yeah.
were racist or something?
Racism hadn't been invented yet. Kind of
I
unironically.
think this one you should stay on very specific examples, though, not ones like that, because indicators is
example.
very broad, and the easy thing to be turned on you with this is like, so you just don't like that more people can play. You know, because that's what Sterling will do, obviously. We're
Yes,
not going to take this to be
of course, obviously.
interesting or seriously in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I mean, the response is going to be, "Oh, wow, that's stupid." Anyway, moving on. Like, it's not going to actually, because that's the thing is the idea of does the inclusion of a no death setting in a video game tell you anything about the priorities of the developers? Maybe.
Yeah, that was my point.
The
Like,
immediate
makes me
indicator
think.
to me is that they don't necessarily give that much of a shit about the mechanical components of their game.
If they can,
I don't
if
know
you
if
can
that's
press a button
necessarily
to
fair,
disable them,
but-
yeah.
any developer that's willing to put something like that in their game, it immediately tells me about their entire thought process, and I can't imagine what else is in the game that I'm not going to enjoy. So I'll just
Well,
pass.
I
Well,
don't
it's a
necessarily
crowded
know.
market
It's just
for
like,
games.
understand the story.
I don't
though.
know why.
It's gonna be the
I
best
don't know why
story
I
ever.
would be interested in a game that is not interested in its own mechanics.
Yes.
Exactly. It's a crowded market, and there are plenty of developers who would say in an instant, "No, you can't just. What are you talking? What do you mean turn off deaths? No, we made a game for you to play. It has like mechanics and difficulty.
it's kinda like if you have a-
your
and
ears
stuff.
during
It's,
that.
What the fuck are you
literally
talking
you
about?
have like a platform where they say, yeah, you won't fall into the bottomless pit. There are no bottomless pit settings. There's no jumps you can't make or
They're just
or totally
normal
fail.
pits.
You'd be like, okay.
In terms
I mean,
of in terms of the
explain that,
narrative
though.
experience, I can almost guarantee you can find you can pick out a film that will give you a better story. Like it's not going to be difficult because games kind of lose a lot in terms of their narrative ambitions by having to give the player things to do. You know, because they have to send you off on various side quests. They have to have you running around. They have to have parts where the player gets to play the game. And because a lot of developers aren't interested in integrating those to a particular extent, they end up like, yeah, okay, you're doing the gameplay bit now, and now here comes the story bit, and then here's the gameplay bit again.
They'd be like,
I
"Oh,
think,
finally,
you know
the
what?
player's done. We can tell our story." Fuck.
What summarizes
Real
that
reason we're
to
here.
me a little bit is if anyone's seen the second D&D episode of Community where it opens their game with there's a bridge in front of you, seems rickety, like will you cross it? And then one of the players just goes, what if I don't want to? What if I want to turn around and just go backward forever? What's in the map that direction?
I love this
And
episode, man.
he says it in the way
And that person is an asshole.
the DM or GM is like, yeah, you could do that. I have stuff for that. And he brings up this huge book and slams him on the table.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
if you
Like
really
a
want to do
highlight
that.
notes. Fucking great.
Oh,
something I actually thought you were going to bring up was the idea that Abed talking about in the first Dungeons and Dragons episode when they're like, "Hey, can you just kill Pierce and give Fat Neil the sword back?" It's like, well, no, that breaches the. I can't breach the rules of the game, otherwise it loses its whole meaning.
Yeah, the whole meaning's gone.
Credit to Far Cry 4, they do let you do that. You can just resolve the conflict immediately
Credit?
by making.
Well, wait. No,
Well, I
you're
mean,
describing
like-
something totally different. You're just describing the thing of you sit in the room for like 15 minutes and then what's his name comes back and that's the end of the game. That's like a meme.
Yeah.
That's not like a real thing.
Well, yeah, I know, but I guess
And
what
it's
I mean
not
is
even-
I
it doesn't even
appreciated
breach
the fact.
continuity. It doesn't even breach the
Yeah, the equivalent
story
for
because
what
it tells you to sit down for 10 minutes. And
The
if you
equivalent
wait
for a
10
video
minutes,
game,
you're like, yeah,
what Fringy's talking about is like reaching into the fucking code and making it so that whatever you want happens. So it's like the asking Abed to just change
okay.
everything about the world according to whatever they want. Like he said, that it
Yeah.
would as soon as he does that,
Literally,
everything's
like
over.
spawning an item into the game.
Yeah, okay, I guess
and
right.
the
I
idea
was
of the
making a
lost
different point.
meaning because it's kind of the thing that happens in the story, right? Is that Fat Neil actually beats Pierce through the game. And so because of that, and because Pierce wasn't making it easy for him, it was the best Dungeons and Dragons game that he ever played. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have been particularly interesting if it was just like, oh, Pierce, you're dead, give Fat Neil the sword back.
Because it was real. It meant something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Make an argument.
Clearing that up.
Dude.
What's that smell?
Make an argument,
Dude,
you
for
fucker.
fuck's sake.
Make an argument, you fucker!
The difficulty discourse has officially turned everybody's brains into weird soup. The elitist sneering and gatekeeping has become altogether more vicious and less.
Yeah, this is what I mean. It's like, get over the rant and then get to the argument.
Well, I don't think that one gets addressed. It's just like, all right, moving on. It's just
we're done?
Fucking hell.
You're fucking kidding me, man. It's just like,
Well,
yeah,
sorry.
isn't this so obviously dumb, guys?
I would say that the video is a little bit of a bait and switch in terms of the topic. It kind of, I guess you'll see.
Oh, yeah.
You'll see.
It's gone on, and of course it's now just another front in the twisted culture wars. Giving a shit about disabled people is seen as another example of wokeism gone mad.
Yep, 'cause
Another
disabled people are
zero-sum game.
dumb. And they suck, and they have no abilities. Like, we got an
Can't do anything.
interesting stance,
thinks
Jim,
this?
but okay. I don't think
give
that,
an
but I guess you
example.
do.
Like, I wish you'd give us just one, like something, like even if it's just one that you're nitpicking, because this is such a like I can't. Who the fuck thinks that? Nobody fucking who plays video games is fucking like gatekeeping.
Well, obviously, anyone who thinks a game should be difficult means that you hate disabled
the
people.
problem is maybe there's one person who this applies to. Maybe there's even a handful of people who this applies to. But like, it's just you're not actually engaging in the conversation.
But, like, people always just gesture at this vague smokescreen of the disabled. There's never any specificity to it. What about being disabled in some particular way makes some particular facets of how this game might be played impossible in such a manner that death needs to be prevented?
Well, but can you imagine if they named it the disabled mode?
Do some fucking journalism.
It wouldn't even be wrong by their by their rules.
Is there an assumption that you're sitting there playing the video game at some kind of like expo as the first release of demo, and you're like, yeah, it's amazing, there's all spectacle stuff, and then next to you rolls up a guy in a wheelchair ready to play, and you just go, oh, how could you play this?
How did you get in here? We got rid of the ramps.
It's so wrong that you could play this. He's like, oh, okay.
Nobody thinks that way.
No,
Games
it's
for people
stupid.
with working legs only.
Everyone
how
is
is journalism mode?
Anyone who
If
sees
we
someone
have
with
to
a
take
disability
everybody
knows
into
something.
account, how is VR and AR ever gonna make the market? That's not
I mean, they're privilege
appealing
goggles,
to
though.
disabled people.
Yeah.
in which they're losing something somehow. The idea that accessibility is something you need to take a principled stance on the same way you would about literal Nazi iconography really
See, that it just leaves yourself open if you make that comparison.
Yeah. You used a clunky example, therefore the argument will never be engaged with.
Once again, though, accessibility and difficulty used interchangeably. Because
that's what Jim does.
Everybody
Every video.
even agree that a no death option is an accessibility option in the same way that colorblind settings are an accessibility option.
I would need very specific appeals
Like
in order
subtitles,
to file
you know?
that away as an accessibility option, because it seems so broadly just about the difficulty.
Yeah.
How could it not be a difficulty option?
speaks
And like,
volumes
you know,
about what
like
a
Rex
cunt
said
you
before,
are.
it's just why not just watch a YouTube video at that point? Because it's just walking from cutscene to cutscene and watching, you know.
Yeah,
shit
I
that
can't
comes out.
imagine you're getting much out of like the
Well,
actual
and
play experience of the game. If
That's what I
there
was
is
asking.
none.
If you do that, if you watch a Let's Play of a game with zero ways to fail it and mostly just walking forward, like going for like a Dear Esther type situation and no fail state, watching that video on YouTube, have you played the game? I guess so.
No.
Pretty much. Because you're doing exactly the same.
You understand what the game is, I would say, at the very least.
I mean, you know the story of the game. You haven't played the game.
And
I
what is
brought
a
this up.
game if not a vehicle for someone's shitty story?
Well, I think instead of saying you
Games
played
can
the
do anything
game,
else.
we would rather say there was never any playing of that game. It was just it's a step up from interactivity is on a scale, and it was pretty low.
Yeah,
it depends on where you draw the line of like what's the definition of playing a game. If I'm in like watching a screen, moving my left stick forward, and then my character moves, am I playing that game or am I just interacting with a controller?
I mean, you're technically playing the game, yeah. But, if you watch it on YouTube, you're not playing the game.
You got to be careful with this one. Philosophers have been puzzling over this one. There is actually a philosophy of video games, not trying to define what constitutes play.
I think so long as you're interacting with it,
Fringy's cracking his knuckles.
Because a 1-year-old could walk up to control and go stick, and then the character moves on the screen. Is that play?
And then they'd say, "Hey, we're hiring at Kotaku. You look like you know what you're doing."
I was going to say, Big Idiot has been posting about all this. Big Idiot and who are Hiddle Subtleties?
Hiddle Subtleties, Big Idiots.
Forget our team. Big Idiot is the best one.
Philosophizers. Big Idiot is renowned. He's the father of philosophy.
Yes.
About literal Nazi iconography really speaks volumes about what a cunt you are. And don't censor that one, Zilla. These people are having principled political stances about the mere existence of accessibility options.
Difficult.
Why not have the interesting conversation instead of the boring one where you just get on your little soapbox and talk about how much better you are than
they
everyone else?
mention Nazis, so we can't talk about it. Yeah. I expect better of someone who's been doing this for this long. Like, come on, man.
They need to hear how
I'm bored.
How cunty they're being. The fuck is wrong with you? That you think disabled access is something to take a principled stance against?
Why is it disabled access that you can't die? I feel like we haven't crossed that bridge.
Disabled people can't engage with video games unless there's a literally cannot lose button
before
that
it's
they can press.
condescending. Do we have to have like a little creature that comes on the screen and goes, "Oh, hello, how are you? Oh, let's get going then. Take one step forward.
Oh.
There you go, you did it."
I noticed that you're technically disabled, so I've done you the service of making sure that you can't die and in no way can fail in this game.
Thank you.
I don't know, man. Do you know how many people are disabled and
this was
have the
done on
mental
your
strength
behalf
to,
by someone
not
you've
let it
never
phase
met?
them? The people would have the mental strength to not let that shit phase them, and this is just a slap in the face to people who just want to play a game and not have this big ass handicap.
Well, yeah,
and not even specify what disability.
This is what I mean.
Whoever said it, what type of disability would require a no death state? It's just insulting.
I was perfectly capable of dying in Half-Life Alyx when I played it, despite only having one leg. So
yeah, there you go.
So the line here was how absurd to take a principled stance on the inclusion of disabled access or whatever. And it's like, well, but isn't that why you're angry? You're taking a principled stance, which is that it is absolutely important and okay and should happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But everyone has a principled stance who gives a shit.
Anybody would dare disagree, but the problem is it's like, yeah, but you haven't even framed it accurately.
And what
people don't like the idea of a no death option in a game. They just find that weird.
And what happens when a disabled person says this argument? And I don't just mean I'm talking about someone who's just a head in a jar who can blow with all straw.
That's still what's a good gaming experience.
Yeah, they're like, fuck you. I don't want to be given this.
Them?
Bullshit,
someone posted it in our chat. You've got Mr. Oblong here. He can beat Dark Souls. So what excuse is there? Just let them do their thing, man. They're not useless morons.
Yeah.
My brother beat Elden Ring, and he's got muscular dystrophy, which is a pretty debilitating illness, and he was still able to beat the hard game, right?
He beat Dark Souls with a banana. God damn it.
Now, if there are people out there who need help in terms of the way they interact with games, but that's usually not going to take this form. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen it take this form.
If anything,
the argument being made here is to make these things to make accessibility options more accessible, special controllers, things like that. And I'm like, yeah, sure. I want those to be cheap. I want those to be, where people who actually want to engage in the hobby and play games, they're more than welcome. I have no problem or not gatekeeping people who want to actually engage with games. And if they have a physical disability, like they have a fucked up hand or something else like that, then yeah, getting them controllers and special peripherals that allow them to do that, man, I'm all for it. But that's not the conversation that's being had here.
I like it.
It could be even deeper than that. It could be even deeper than that because someone with a disability might not be able to participate in physical activities, like they can't play ball anymore or whatever. So getting that competitive aspect out through video games is even more important for them. So the game design is more important for people with disabilities, arguably in that case, than someone without. Yeah. So we're denying them that opportunity to really explore mechanics or like get their competitive nature out. It's just a slap in the face. I think that's fucking bullshit, man.
Yeah, exactly. I would
being-
find it
yeah.
fucking insulting. Like, oh, you little special boy, you need a, you need a non-deaf mode in order to play this game. Oh, aren't you sweet?
I'm paralyzed, so I can't play ball anymore. So games is even more important to me now. So they don't think of it from that perspective. It's crazy.
I post that story where the first Neuralink brain implant guy pulled an all-nighter and played a bunch of Civilization 6. And then he played like some chess and Mario Kart, and he was like having the time of his life. He's a quadriplegic, and I'm like, that's awesome. That makes those experiences accessible to him. He didn't want to play a non-death version of whatever. He wanted to play those games.
There you disabled fucker. No, for you.
Can use.
Imagine being
want
forced
my
to play
non-end
that.
mode of Civ. Yeah.
Imagine being forced to have all your gaming like nerfed like that because people just want to handicap.
If you played on a mode on chess where if any piece comes within 2 or even like 1 of your king, they automatically die, the enemy. And it's just like he's like, no, I want to play chess, and they're like, no, you can play your chess.
No, you're disabled though.
Like, no.
Yeah, you're playing. Yeah, maybe one day when you're big and older, you can play real chess with the adults. But for now, we're gonna make it to where you can't lose. You can only come in first in Mario Kart. This is the experience you've been wanting this whole time, right? The ability to never lose.
Boy, you get to play on special mode. No other option for you.
Are not amused.
It would be damn and bizarre if this uproar was about one of the usual hardcore gamer games, but Dragon Age Ventrilo isn't even a Souls-like. Dragon Age isn't known or celebrated for being difficult. It isn't known for requiring it.
Well, so what? And you conclude that it must be about hatred of disabled people as opposed to a broader issue that applies to all video games.
This game isn't lauded for its difficulty, therefore you shouldn't therefore its mechanics don't matter at all. That's essentially just what he said.
No, like I said, I think he's trying to go the direction of like this is proof that it's about some kind of like bigotry. It's not about.
Why would you care that much when it's a game that's about story and not gameplay?
Like I said, there's so many things you could conclude from that piece of information, but narratives, whatever.
Elden Ring, Shadow of the Bigotry.
This is just a different context of the Star Wars 1, 2, and 3 were stupid, or 4, 5, and 6 were stupid, so therefore the new ones being stupid isn't a problem. It's just the same argument.
Yeah, stop denigrating the thing.
What about it?
Star Wars was always bad. I hate that argument.
Aliens, stupid decisions through it as well.
Yeah, the people in Alien weren't that smart. Like, who said that recently? Someone in a podcast.
It hurts.
Yeah.
Like, are you serious? Like, come on, let's not do that now.
Known or celebrated for being difficult. It isn't known for requiring its players to get good. It's a BioWare game, an RPG regarded almost entirely.
It's a BioWare game. That used to mean something, Jim. That used to mean something. Dragon Age Origins was difficult.
I do find
it
a
was
little
a
bit
hard
weird to
game.
say that, like an RPG is not really
Used to
known
be,
for its mechanics. It's just a weird thing to say. Like, an RPG is not known for its design or mechanics. Because, like, one of the things that people talk about is story, or at least they used to when people played BioWare games in greater numbers.
Why do they just pick this one aspect of it and just decide this is what people appreciate?
The argument is that, well, it's story focused, so who gives a fuck about like
that's what I mean.
Of the options that are available in terms of like outright mitigating the gameplay? Because that's what it is, right? Like, if you're not dying, it's like, well, that's just a total mitigation of the gameplay. Like, if you can't die, then there's no point in doing anything in terms of learning how to play the game.
Just moving forward.
No engagement required.
Like, which is just weird that you would have a mode where it's like, here's a mode where you just don't have to engage with like the majority of the game.
Here's a game you don't have to play.
Yeah, you're not forced to learn from your mistakes. Why are you even here? It's just it ruins the entire purpose.
I think it's. I mean,
you don't even have to like play. That's sort of the point being made. Is that for a game like this, the mechanics will often be built around that sort of punish reward structure. It's to the point that when the punish side of that doesn't exist, you no longer actually have to abide by any of the rules that the game is offering. You don't really have to do anything. You could pretty much just ignore the game and like hold down whatever the button causes you to attack.
It's just a strange feature because the idea of whether or not fail states is what constitutes a game is kind of like That's like a big focal point of the discussion of what constitutes a game is usually fail state.
Oh, Jim's not even ready for that kind of discussion.
If you have a
Super Mario,
there are no fail states, it's like, what is that now? What is
yeah? It's like is Myst not a video game because there's not a fail state? I mean, it's obviously it's not the kind of discussion that I don't even know if Jim is capable of having.
Well, the thing
is, fundamental part of games, from like Super Mario to Donkey Kong, like that's a big aspect.
Fail state?
You have to be able to work around that, like learning from your mistakes and go from that.
I don't agree. I don't think that a game has to have a fail state necessarily.
No, I didn't say that. I said it's a big part of it's a big part of video games, like being able to like learn from your mistakes, and it goes back as far as Super Mario and Donkey Kong, which is a lot of people's, some of the most OG games. Just not, and if you remove the ability to fall into a hole in those games, then what do you have? Like, there's nothing there. They would have never become what they are.
This is not like a conversation about the nature of game design, like how the fundamentals of a lot of video games and what that means in terms of artistic expression. That's not. We're not interested in having that conversation in this video. Like,
no, like I said, I don't know if Jim is capable of having it at this point.
Well, the thing is that it's already been stated what it's about, right? It's the idea that there are a bunch of people who hate disabled people and don't want them to play video games because they're terrible. Like, that's
what an absurd position, by the way.
That's gonna be the virtue signal, yeah.
Have you guys ever heard, like, counting internet weirdos, have you guys ever heard a single person, like even online, express the perspective, I hate the disabled?
I've never. Well, I think Jim would just say that they'll never come out and say it. But they'll use subtle, like, dog whistles and whatnot to signal that to other people. But even they know that it's a bad thing to say out loud.
This is your dog whistle. Video game accessibility.
I'm trying to think if I've ever, like, someone expresses beliefs that make me think, oh, you probably hate a disabled person or hate disabled people generally. I don't think I've even seen that. I don't think I've
ever people count that.
These people don't exist. I'm convinced of it.
I can give enough credit to the people who dislike me online.
Yeah, no, not including Fringy
because I'm disabled.
Wow,
Fringy's a special case.
Fringy your stage ramps.
He's just blasphemy. I can't believe it.
This is such a fucked up subject that you would think he would. This video should have started with like a bunch of proof. Like you should have. This is something that you need to provide evidence for.
No,
if you're gonna delve into it.
Be a fucking journalist, maybe.
No, yeah, man.
No.
You're in a Lumbo hard, Bo.
Video games journalism deserves Jim Sterling.
Bro, every year these videos, I'm just astounded by how lazy they are. Just rant into a microphone about the gamers and then move on with your life.
Well, it's not just that. It's that I am not a gamer. I'm not someone who... I don't want to be included in that demographic. I don't want to be included in that group. After all this time,
they're a marginalized race, all right?
It's like...
Those poor gamers.
Gamers are the most oppressed class in the world.
They do need to rise up.
Yeah.
Entirely for its story rather than its gameplay. I don't know if I've ever seen people shit their diaper.
Yeah, see, the dichotomy of story and gameplay as well is already like, that's a bit weird.
You can't excise them from each other. Come on, they depend on each other.
If I'm playing a game and I'm in control and I'm just walking through like a place that the environment tells me a story, what's happening there? Is that story or is it gameplay or is it both? It's both.
God. What if it's all blank, Fringy?
What if story complements gameplay and vice versa? Wouldn't that be neat?
No, that sound damn bad.
Oh.
It's just this weird like, dichotomy. It reminds it's why would it be like dichotomized to where there's the story part and then there's the gameplay part, and they don't have any feedback into the other.
Those are the same people who think there's only character and action scenes and they're separate when it comes to movies. They don't understand that. Like,
it is similar to that. I agree.
You know, it's frustrating. They separate these components of art, and it's like they don't understand that it's how it all blends together is how we perceive it. And like that's where the replayability comes from, or the rewatchability. It's all these things. Nobody's playing a game that's shit just for the story. You know what I mean?
Difficulty often plays into this as well. Like the game I played towards the start of this year called Rain World, fantastic video game, one of the best ever made, I think. Rain World fundamentally depends on its difficulty for the experience it's trying to present, because it is placing you as an animal in an unfamiliar ecosystem. essentially. And a lot of its systems are simulatory in that they are built around trying to get you into that headspace and experiential space of how you approach scenarios in the game world. Difficulty is incredibly important to that, and a lot of what's going on in terms of how you play the game is the game expressing its narrative content to you.
That's right. If you remove the difficulty component from a lot of games, you use a massive avenue to tell stories and build the world of what you have.
That's a particularly specific example. Something that I suppose you could say happens a lot more often in games is, think about like Metal Gear Rising, right? When you're fighting Armstrong and then you win. That victory feels really great if you're playing it on a hard difficulty. You know, you're like
really hard on a higher difficulty
with him. You're like, yeah, shit, that was hard. So this victory feels really great. And it's that catharsis that comes from overcoming the challenge that, you know, if you're playing on an easier difficulty, you get through the game and you get there, but like, kind of, it's not the same experience, right? As if it's really hard and then you win. The catharsis of finally winning after all that, and in a sense being aligned with the feeling of the character that you're playing as, right? Like, how is it the gameplay can align your natural experience of the game, like your joy or frustrations or anything like that? How can it match it with what's happening with the character? And are there any ways that if you mitigate the challenge or make it to where it's basically like irrelevant, that it drives a wedge between the player's ability to essentially latch onto the same sort of experience as the character that they're playing as? But like, you can't have this conversation if you treat gameplay and story as two things that exist in a vacuum, independent of each other. Yep, this is the gameplay part. Once that ends, that's out of the picture, and then the story part begins. And once that's done, the gameplay part comes back in. It's just not, doesn't describe like a huge number of video games and the experience that they're offering.
Yeah, there's plenty of video games that, especially in the opening or the tutorial, will use whether it's Golden Sun or Sword of Mana. You'll start off, you'll get your little tutorial combat, hit the goo, fight the bats. It's very easy, you're learning the game. And then you hit the boss that you're kind of intended to lose because he's just so much better than you. It's an intentional difficulty spike that you just can't overcome to establish how powerful the enemy is. And then you have to go through the game to get stronger, then get better. And then when you finally face him again, you've gotten a bunch stronger, you're on his level, and you can... You know, and that's part of the experience. That's part of the idea.
Would the developer be wrong if they said, the reason why I'm not adding any difficulty settings is because I want to have the player experience these feelings, and if you can't get through it, that's too bad. Like, that's not, you don't get to experience that, unfortunately.
I would respect the hell out of them for saying that. Like, I would want to try the game just based on them saying that. Like, just the respect they have for the experience they created.
There are plenty of games that you've beaten that aren't challenging. And you could be like, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fine. I liked it. But, you know, I got to the end, and the end wasn't any harder than the beginning, and I never felt like I was tested or challenged. And so I was like, yeah, it's so-so. Yeah. You don't walk away with like, oh, I finally beat this game that I'd spend, dozens and dozens of hours working my way through and learning it and, challenging myself. And I don't want to have that experience kind of robbed from people.
I wonder how far in the other direction this pushes as well, because I'm thinking about Undertale now, and specifically the genocide route of Undertale, which is by design unpleasant and bad to play, while also being extremely difficult for very particular reasons in terms of what the game's trying to do narratively. Is it just not allowed because that's bad for accessibility? Is it just not allowed to do that?
You mean like the resource difference you can get in something even as simple as BioShock for good and bad? Moral speaking, it's like, well, we can't have the sort of detrimental effects of choosing the evil side. We're going to have to account for them because that would make the game harder. It's like that, but okay,
harder. Good.
Should be reversed.
Well, that's a whole discussion on should different moral routes in games just flat out be objectively worse in terms of resources and stuff.
A completely different conversation to this, though. Just whether or not. If they do or don't, what does this role have to play in it? And it almost feels like an annoying supervisor that these other elements are doing their thing comes in and says, no, I don't want it to be that way. And it's like, no, but this isn't to do with you. And it's like, it is now. Everything's to do with me now.
What if I did make everything about me?
to this extreme degree over difficulty options in a BioWare RPG before, but if I have, it certainly hasn't been like this.
You stink like a dead dog. We can't stand it. I can't put my honey poo through this.
As I say though, the difficulty discourse has finally turned people's brains.
This is still just ranting. There's no argument yet.
Yeah, this is the ranting bit.
I don't even get how that show
Get on with it.
it.
Go off, King. Get it
Into
out of your
strange
system.
cheese, and the outrage is pure knee-jerk nonsense at this point. Very much
That's
like
this
we
video.
discussed last week with the gamers TM whining whenever a female
I thought that was James A. Castor for a second. I was like, what the fuck is he doing in this video?
character gets
I
a
can't believe he
redesign.
can say that when he's been nothing but whine for like 10 minutes or whatever this is. It's just insufferable.
It was funny because there was a huge rant. Now it's gonna be like, and remember how I ranted last week about other things?
Well,
I'm gonna
yeah,
rant about that now.
yeah, this is where the bait and switch starts to come in. It's
Yeah,
like
there is-
we're starting to move away from the initial topic.
If you come to Jim Sterling for insight, you will starve to death.
Well, that's where we come in, right, guys? We've been talking about it. We've been going over the arguments. Woohoo!
The
like
backlash
trains.
isn't about specific scenarios anymore, and it triggers a nasty little tantrum. Pure, unabashed reactionism.
Yeah, I can tell.
It's pretty funny.
Is this like
I've noticed.
projection a bit? You know.
I think so. There's going to be a lot
Yeah.
of projection in these videos.
Yeah, like how's Sterling not doing the same thing in reverse?
Exactly.
Right,
There's no
that's what I
nuance
mean.
here.
It's
There's just
okay when I do
raging.
it, because I'm just. I'm righteous.
You've generated the boogeyman in your head, and now anything that comes even close remotely to that boogeyman, you just go, "Oh my god, it's you again," and start ranting about how much you hate the boogeyman. That's got to be
the classic-
reactionary.
Twitter thing of like making up a guy in your head to be mad about.
Yeah, he's he's mad about people having a knee-jerk reaction when he's having a knee-jerk reaction to the knee-jerk reaction.
Well,
now we're
knee-jerk
having a knee-jerk
it
reaction of
implies
calmly
exercise, so-
discussing between a lot of people of all different kinds of gaming things. We're not setting records here because EFAP we've had some insane ones, but you know we're doing pretty well. 5 minutes into 2 hours and 40 minutes. Not bad.
Incredible. It's incredible.
We're almost at the 10% mark for the stream. Hooray!
To cry foul over a story-driven game having a story-driven difficulty mode to
Story-driven
such a
difficulty
story-driven
mode.
That's
Story-driven difficulty mode.
Oh, that's
The
a
inability
triggering
to
statement,
lose.
isn't it?
Dude,
Well,
the
it
language
kind
is
of
so fucking
implies that-
slimy. I hate it.
Well, think of the
Story-driven
implications.
makes
A
it worse.
story-driven difficulty mode. Does that imply that the hero can never fail in the story?
I'd say it's
Does that
also
imply
like-
that the narrative is such that it will end perfectly
I
cathartically?
think
implies
I think
that
a lot of
always-
games do have story
It's
mode.
more
and
so the
it's
idea
not like
that,
no fail state. It's just easy mode.
I guess that's the thing, though, is like the idea that, well, yeah, the story-driven mode is the one where you can't die. It's like, what are we? Why is the attitude that a fail state in a game cannot feed into the story? Like that you're not losing anything by reducing either the challenge or even totally eliminating a fail state. That has no impact on story.
What about games
I
where
mean,
Even something so simple as the narrative stakes or tension. What's at stake here? Nothing, because I can't
Nothing.
lose.
Yeah, the Ludo-narrative dissonance sort of thing. That's the word that we love.
Yeah.
So if I cannot fail, if the gameplay is such that I am never challenged, then I can never fail and I can never die. Well, that's going to have narrative implications.
And what about
In
games
fact,
that
actually, like-
contextualize your deaths? Like they're part of the story.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just about to bring that
Hades.
up. I that's actually one of the coolest things I've seen a couple games do. Like Hades is an obvious one where it contextualizes the underworld and him just being revived again and again and bringing back to, the start. He actually gets frustrated and people talk about it, and he's obviously kind of immortal too, so it doesn't really affect him the same way. But I also like other games. Like I think anybody play. I keep getting it mixed up with a Pixar movie, Outward. That had an interesting death system too, where if you died, you were like mortally wounded, and there would be some sort of story sequence explaining how you actually survived that fight. Where like, some mysterious stranger fought off the enemies, and then he dragged you away, left you a note and a potion or whatever, or maybe you woke up later or something like that. So it kind of gives you some context, and so you aren't just magically respawning. There's actually a story bit to it. You might actually have some negatives along with it. So I really like that aspect as well. It can kind of elevate the game a bit.
Yeah, it's adding to the story. It is not making it so that you're not engaging with the story. It is simply telling a different story, accustomed to your actions. Why is that bad?
Imagine if you applied this to something that's really cool in the Thief games, is that as the games, the maps are like contextualized in the world. They're like actual drawings that people in that world created of the locations that you need to go into, and then sometimes the map is incomplete because an area was inaccessible to whoever sourced the map. And so, like, oh well, I have enough information to get me to this point. But once I get to this point, I have to start figuring out for myself and try to make sense of this location, right? Like, if this is a real place, where would this place be? Could I find this thing there? If you're at a setting where it's like, oh, it's the no stealth mode, where, like, you just get walked right to your objective and walked back out and none of the enemies can detect you. It's like, that can clash pretty big time against what was clearly, like, a narrative intention of the game. One of the things that makes you feel like you're actually inhabiting that role is that you're doing well as being like a master thief. But if you had a mode where it's like, oh well, it will just show you, it'll actually give you a totally detailed map and it will show you exactly where you need to find the things. I was like, okay, kind of like really can actually harm the story. It's not like Thief isn't story driven itself.
No,
I would say that
difficulty changes result in a genre change.
I would say the emphasis on death as a mechanic has inspired many genres, like Dark Souls. How many roguelike and roguelike games are coming out nowadays, especially considering the prevalence of permadeath in games like Warzone, PUBG, even Fortnite. That's a huge aspect of why those games became so popular, because you have this emphasized risk of not being able to participate anymore. Like, those games would play completely differently if you had just free respawns all the time.
Oh yeah, I've played a shit ton of DayZ. I love it. I got like 15, almost 1,600 hours in that game, and I still, when I get into like fights with other players and I'm geared, like my hand's still like shaking. I'm like, holy shit!
Oh yeah.
Like, man, it's so intense.
Moment of yeah.
I'm like, oh, I could lose everything, or I can win this fight and finally do it. And you feel like it's an experience that few games can give you. And the idea of
you spend so much time gathering that gear, and it means a lot at that point.
It's that. And so it's the other elements that I don't want to lose that.
They can like take that away from me.
And it's also the sense in those games that you die from one bullet. You can die so fucking quickly.
What I would, because to draw it back to the idea of like, well, why do you care? It's just a difficulty setting that doesn't affect you. If you came to me and you said like, well, yeah, no, this is story driven and this is the gameplay part, so like we can just totally mitigate the gameplay and that has no impact on the story. If you tell me that, it's like, oh shit, I think we have a different sort of perception of what video games are. Like, if you feel that way, I'm not sure that I am that interested in the game.
Tourist.
Well, it's just, like it sounds like it. I don't know. You can say something about your design philosophy or intentions that can make someone go, you know what, that's optional, but like, I don't know, man. Like, it just tells me something about your priorities, or like your values, what you think the values of games are, that it could throw somebody off. The whole point being that it's not unreasonable to hear that there's like a certain game mode that makes you go like, actually, I'm not very interested in this game now, even if it is optional. Like, that's not unreasonable.
Not to mention, like the priority we've mentioned before, the priority shift. Every single design decision, every single line of code is a resource spent.
Exactly.
So any effort put into these alternative, you want to call it difficulty, whatever, accessibility, I don't think it's really accessibility, but if difficulty modes or whatever, that is time spent. And what is the cultural effect on that? Is next time around are a bunch of marketing people and or focus groups going to say, oh, well, actually 10-20% people used a story mode or easy mode, and so let's just make that the primary mode now. Let's focus on that. Let's fine tune this game to accommodate for those players. It's hypothetical, but I could see it happening. It's happened before. So I've seen many franchises go down that route in terms of focusing on a player base that that design no longer represents the core player base that made the series popular in the first place. So there is an effect that creates.
Developers not understanding their games is a real thing, especially at the higher level.
Yeah, especially when you work on a game for 8 years, like Concord, and it like has a maximum player count of 500 players, whatever. Like you definitely lose sight of. Yeah, literally, the highest player count was less than Gollum. Kind of wild.
Gollum was a masterpiece.
I was about to say, what the fuck?
To be higher than
Gollum. The hell? Jeez.
Or not.
Best game ever made.
No, Gollum
One
won
of the
scenario.
games ever made. Absolutely.
Do you guys think there's
bloody
a set of people out there that play games, but they hate being challenged in any way? Like they will play a game and just instantly activates all the cheat codes there is.
Yeah,
It's because
yeah,
they
plenty of
like
people like
to
that.
be told. It's the same thing that a lot of them say anyway. They want to have the power fantasy without earning it. They want to be affirmed in their abilities and their power and their competency without having to do anything that really stresses it. They want to win the game, but not be challenged, not to actually lose, not to have any, threats or stakes, but they want to win. They want to defeat the enemies and press the buttons, and they just want to be guaranteed that success.
Want that satisfaction.
So if those people exist, couldn't this game mode be for them then? A game mode where you can't die, but they can still just hit
them.
stuff?
Yeah. Wow, racism.
It stems from a place of not taking the medium seriously, and so I'm disinclined to take it seriously as a perspective to cater for.
For the future of video games, those people need to be ignored. Like that thought process will kill the gaming industry. Just slowly.
Yeah, there's an element there. Yeah, I don't want to support this mindset. I don't want games that feel they need to do this, or that even want to do this. Honestly, if you make games and this is a desire that you have to be like, yeah, you can't possibly lose or die or anything. I don't know. Like, do I want you making games? Do I want your games to be successful? Is that an attitude I want to support?
I just think it's bad for art in a lot of ways, because I just imagine, say, a film where you put the film on, but before it starts, it's like, hey, so there's going to be some graphic stuff of potentially offensive subjects, this, that, and the other in here. But if you press the yes button, we will remove all of that content from the film. You can still watch it.
I've seen that. God. I was playing an indie game just because it looked kind of funny, and I swear to God, at the beginning of the game, it's like, this game has references to a mother figure. If this is too upsetting for you, disable this option and we'll remove references to a mother.
That's sort of the thing, though. It's like in films, no one would tolerate this.
No.
This is not okay in films. The disclaimer does enough.
Theo, you reminded me of a video
in the real world if you can't handle that. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, just age
I used to rent from this place that would have that shit. They, instead of just having a warning, like maybe Blockbuster, some places would have, they would literally describe what type of graphic content was in the movie. They would spoil the whole movie of all the action or any gory pieces in it. It's like, what the fuck's the point now? Just reading the back of it and just move on. Whether it's games or movies, you gotta let people just go through the experience themselves.
The aspect
there is an attitude, I think,
where removal of the ability for the game to, or the removal of the ability for the art to present you with things that you don't want. I think art needs to be able to do that to be effective. It needs to be able to throw things at you that you don't explicitly and consciously want to be affected by. Like a lot of horror works along that principle, right? It's like you're not exactly enjoying whatever you see. Those sorts of
art could be very uncomfortable. It can be super uncomfortable experiencing
art can pose extremely uncomfortable topics to you
while
doing so.
While the chess burst scene is happening in Alien, it's like, would you like to turn the blood green? We can do that.
Are you okay? Should we skip to the next scene? Are you all right? Fucking hell, man.
We even have an ADR line that'll come up if you do that. It's like, oh my god, Cade's blood is green. Why? Must have been the alien.
Nail in the eye.
Can't be halfway on the video.
Deal with it.
Just do
the video of meet the pyro. You remember that with the whole contrast of what he sees and what everyone else sees.
Yeah.
Just do what Thanos does in Endgame. Just turn all the blood into bubbles.
Yeah.
I think one of the most painful ways is the black blood of the Orokai, where you still get a little gore out of it, but it's not as visceral, that's a good way of meeting people halfway, so no one's super offended. I don't mind that. But nerfing everything to the ground.
Oh, sorry. If they did that, for any reason, they probably just did it to get a PG-13 rating.
That's what I was saying. I think that's a good.
That's why Cleon's blood is bright pink.
Yeah, it's a good happy medium. You can do with Alien,
but
it's a
in
good
a way, it's not even a compromise, right?
It's more of a side thing, yeah.
No reason they should have the same blood as humans.
It's a more effective solution, and it fits the story because aliens and Orokai, like you said, different blood. But then you take that and you try to take that and put it to other things. It just doesn't work. They end up just completely ruining what makes it enjoyable in the first place. And I
forgot who made that point, but I could totally see that they're for example, The Thing. They made a Thing game. I don't remember if I had the screen in there, but imagine watching The Thing and having there's games that actually have a mode where you can turn, it's an arachnophobia mode where you can turn off spiders. So imagine watching The Thing. It's like, warning, there's a spider-like creatures in this movie, and so you're essentially spoiling the head crawler.
Yeah,
thing.
and
Like,
even The Thing shouldn't have that stupid scene at the beginning where they show the ship, just like Predator does. They should delete those scenes completely.
Yeah, that was producer interference.
If we got to a point where
But imagine having that in addition to that.
If they had a full-ass list at the beginning of every single thing you'd be offended by, it's like, we're going to need a new accessibility mode for normal people where they could just watch the film.
That's what I was describing at the video store. They could literally spoil everything. I couldn't believe it. I refused to go to that place because of that. Like, what's
That's
the point?
sort of that's a fundamental thing with games that makes them interesting, and it's also a big problem for developers, is that players have a lot of control over video games because they're interactive in a way that you don't have with a film. Like, thanks to save states, for example, if I get a narrative outcome that I don't want, I can reload an earlier save and try again. Whereas if, say, the same thing happened in a film, I can't, like, remake the film in some way that I would prefer. I don't have the ability to change what happens in a film or a show in the way that I can change what happens in a game and change my experience of a game.
Wish I had that power, man. Save some seasons, bro.
And players are often like poorly motivated because we don't know what we want. Like, quite frankly, you know, what you consciously want is often very distinct from what you would most enjoy theoretically. Like, this is pretty much a known quantity.
And sometimes games kind of have to be a little bit heavy-handed to kind of like say, hey, this is the experience we want you to experience. Don't do that. Stop it. We want you to have this sort. We want you to be actually kind of uncomfortable right now. We want you to actually be struggling right now. Don't just load that save game, that quick save you did 5 minutes ago before you attack that person. Yeah. You know, I kind of enjoy the idea, and you see some more games nowadays doing it more, where they kind of a little bit force your hand. It's like, no, you just can't. You've kind of made this choice. Kind of deal with it. Role play it out. See where it goes.
Driven game having a story-driven difficulty mode to spunk blood in rage over those less able than you getting to enjoy the same toys.
If it's just pause, we talk extensively about all the nature of every subject there is. Unpause. Blah, 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 blah.
Hello. Welcome to every frame of pause.
Points. Like, we made 1,000 points in that last 2 minutes there. So many subjects covered. We cut back and he's just still rambling about the same whiny nonsense. Nothing.
Yeah, no.
Nothing.
I'm not talking about the EFAP format, Rags. I'm talking about the fact that every time we unpause, it's just continuous rambling about, like, angry... There's no points being made. We have to wait.
Oh, yeah.
Because like we cover plenty of videos that make
I'd
points.
love to engage with this stuff.
Yeah.
You guys want to just talk about video games instead?
That's what we've been doing. It's just been the vehicle to talk about video games.
He hasn't really
to be fair,
contributed.
We've discussions.
No, we're kicking off discussions. This has all been us doing this.
It gives us something to
we're making better points for him.
Does this video have an accessibility mode?
Oh.
Shit, man.
Yeah, I'm kind of triggered by the visuals here, to be honest.
You do is to basically admit you just want players excluded for the sake of it.
Yeah, that's it. That's all it ever was.
Oh, come on. At least give us the credit by calling us racist or something. Come on. No, that's no fun.
It's the spookiest time of year, and what's more suitable than EFAP celebrating with a brand new set of terrifying plushies? Introducing the EFAP Halloween plushie set, starting with Mauler the Longpire, a terrifying monster of bloodthirst and long. This cuddly beast is both infamous and primal in his desire to drain the very soul from the world of media, and he's coming for you. But he's not alone. How could the Longpire be complete without his trusty doggo? Rags-o-lantern. Poised charmingly in his pumpkin, your Rags-o-lantern will be there to offer his support and encouragement and sarcastic commentary to all your endeavors. This gourd-adorned Shiba Inu will give your pumpkin patch a pantalooned pooch's worth of company, and of course, both of these fine, fiendish fellows are joined by yet another though his eyes may have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming. Fringy the Raven will gladly perch atop your couch, cuddly and at the ready. This corvid ventures nowhere without his scythe, and he's more than ready to slash his way through all obstacles. But not without the final member of this cutthroat cohort. Hear the bell as it strikes the hour of the wolf. When the midnight sky is red, a beast shall emerge from the forest to plunder your local pizza parlor. Behold, the dreaded werewolf, complete with the sunken eyes of a beast who avoids the searing heat of the sun, carrying with him a slice of his latest victim. This legend of the night will surely be a fantastic addition to this crew of dark demons and pumpkin playmates. But that's not all, no sir. Have you ever left home only to worry you're leaving the members of your favorite podcast behind? Do you despair when Mauler's commentary, Fringy's laughs, Wolf's fury, or Rags' puns aren't around anymore? Well, anguish no longer. Now you can stay warm and cozy during those chilly autumn days while constantly explaining to everyone that, no, it's not electronic fapping, I swear. Introducing the official Every Frame a Pause Halloween hoodie. Perfect for lounging around indoors, shopping, long walks on the pier, weddings, baby showers, funerals, Halloween, Christmas. Complete with the expected furnishings of the season, as well as some gorgeous artwork by Black Soul Odin. The EFAP hoodie is ready to keep you warm and comfy through those winter months. There may even be a surprise guest on the back. Pick up yours today, because once the campaign ends, it'll be gone for good. And don't forget Mauler the Longpire, Rags O'Lantern, Fringy the Raven, and Werewolf. Completing the EFAP Halloween set. For every item you pick up together, the discount will increase. Be sure about what you'd like before it's too late, as the spooky season will not last forever. Find them all at makeship.com/shop/EFAP. All links can be found in the description. Thank you all so much for watching and supporting the show. We will see you next time.